We were trying to log into it yesterday and it wasn't working very well. Okay, well.
Set it up. So.
Oh, you did? So, okay, well, I'll try and log into it later. Good, thank you. Anyways, so our next speaker is going to be Boris. He's got some YouTube videos. He's got some very, very interesting material. As with anything with the law, I just want to make you aware that sometimes it's hard to get your head around it. So the best thing you can do is listen to it, and we're going to upload this to YouTube. And Boris has other videos on YouTube. You do a search for Boris, and you'll find a lot of stuff. So I would suggest you watch some of his other videos, and watch this video again in 6 months after you've had a chance to digest it. I think the scriptures tell us something about line upon line, precept upon precept. So it takes time for things to sink in sometimes. So I would encourage you to do that, because even some of the stuff that he talks about, I am having trouble with. But I believe it's true, because so much of what he says I know is true. And so even I will need to watch the video again.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, because the more questions you ask, the more it discusses. And the more I talk about it, the more it easier flows out and it starts condensing itself. And it just expands on the thought and condenses at the same time. And that's how I get all this out. That's how we did this. We just started talking about it, and it started flowing.
Right. So, anyways, I'll just turn the time over to Boris, and it's all turned over. Oh, actually, well, you got this. Do you still need the that writing board? Or
He's coming with it. I'll have it in a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I went to the station.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go and have a seat in the back.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Second of all is I do this. I have a very simple philosophy behind this. Everything results on proof of claim, and a claim is a right to compel performance. Thus, if someone can't provide their claim, then what they're doing is wrong, and it's all for profit and gain. And once it goes into profit and gain, they're what they call Usufruct. See, the U being the substance, and Usufruct is the use of the fruit, while you retain disposal rights of it. Because we found in Harvard law that there's in any property there's three rights in any property: use, fruit, disposal. The use of the fruit is for the usufruct. The disposal rights goes to what they call the naked owner, which is a right created by the virtue of creating the usufruct. I still believe, or I'm led to believe, that usufruct is a divine word. It describes exactly what happens to you should you violate divine law. And divine law is imposing your will on someone else without their permission. So if you're imposing your will on someone and you have no right to do it, then you so fucked. That's all there is to it. So what you see up here is the earliest diagram I did, and it was really fast coming. It came out like an hour and a half. So what it shows is the spiritual nature of this whole thing. And in the star diagram, what I call it, is you have two functions. First, you have to know the path. This is the star. This is where you forge your intent, forge your will. Then you shape, just like any metalworking, any swordsmithing, anything else. First, they have to take the raw metal and forge it into something they can use. So they forge the rough shape of the weapon. Then they anneal it, which is they shape it, by hammering it out, reheating it, hammering it out till it gets the desired shape they're looking for. And then they anneal it, which basically puts it into the water to harden it, to make it solid, so then they can work with it some more, and they keep the integrity, but it reveals its true purpose. And the integrity behind a weapon is you mill it down, you shape it, you sharpen it, you get it looking good, looking great, and suddenly you have the weapon, the sword of God, in your hand, in your heart. And this is where all this occurs, it's all in your heart. So you have the sword of God in your heart. Now, you take this weapon, that sword, remember it's a double-edged sword, so you can also cut yourself. Remember this. This is a double-edged weapon, so you got to be righteous while you're doing it, which means this is where the Usufruct comes in. You realize that if you're trampling on other rights, even though you're righteous, you're indignantly righteous. So you're swinging that weapon like a kid who just found his daddy's gun. And, something's going to go off and you're going to hurt someone. And this is why I keep it so simple, that it's proof of claim or it's profit and gain. If they don't have the claim, there is no right and there's wrong. If it's wrong and they're seeking to enforce it, now you have force and wrong, which are the greatest enemies of peace, which means you just uncovered the Antichrist. And it could be within anybody around you. It can be in someone who's totally righteous and he's still acting in wrong through force, so therefore the Antichrist is within him, and as your brother, you go to your brother and confront him. And that's what this is all about. This is all about confronting. Now, the path you walk, this is the walking of it. So at first you're baptized and initiated through the fires. The waters of the Spirit come over you. Now you got to walk through the fires of the Armageddon. And I call it the Armageddon because it happens up in your mind, where the light of truth burns away all the crap everybody thought was truth. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's like, oh, I knew that was wrong. But you still held on to it, and it must be let go. This is all about letting go. Everything, all these things y'all are learning about, it all comes down to the one essence of letting go. Letting go your attachments to the material world to embrace a more spiritual way of life that's been missing in the material world. That's why we find ourselves in this world the way it is. If we all lived with our heart and with full intent to serve each other, you would not have the problems in this world. End of story. That's just it. So if you look at the reflection of society out there, you're seeing the collective reflections of all the hearts of the people interacting with the matrix, whatever we call that matrix thing. It's an ever-changing world. It's never static. It always changes. It's dynamic in nature. You receive a present when you got here, which is the present you currently find yourself. Your job is to leave a better present than the present you found for the future. And that's what your stewardship is. That's what Usufruct is. It's all about the stewardship. And we found this right here. And when I sat down and analyzed it, we saw it in all the laws. These are all international laws. So your military government martial law book, which is on the website, it's in the scans and other section of the website, iamsomedude.com. Basically, that since the martial law that's currently in place has a recognition of peaceful inhabitants, they have a corresponding duty to make sure one's not peaceful one day and at war the next. They call that war rebels. So they test you. And every single time one of these guys comes at you, it's not about you. It's about the Spirit working through you. Remember, Christ said, don't be worried about the persecutions. They do not persecute you for what you do. They persecute you for what I do through you. Okay? So that's what they're doing. So what it is the accuser comes into the body of the one they're doing, or takes over, and says, you're not worthy of God's kingdom. That's the accusation. You're not worthy of God's kingdom. You're ignorant of God. You don't deserve Him. You're not worthy to receive His covenants and His blessings. Now, through all this, now you know you can walk in the path. All you got to do is act peacefully. And peacefully doesn't mean take it, you have to suffer all the indignities, because it's better to suffer all the indignities than consent. But at the same time, you can also question the accuser, going, all right, fine, you say I'm not worthy of God's kingdom, prove it. What evidence do you have I'm not worthy of it? And that's what the proof of claim is all about. The proof of claim is proof of claim I'm not worthy, or proof of claim you have a right to do whatever it is you're doing. Where's your right? Where's the wrong I've committed against God? And the very first wrong people do is when that name comes up. That's the very first one. That's idolatry if you claim to be that name, because that's a false and graven image. However, it also works for you because you're in the land of the heathens. So in the land of the heathens, you also provide the animation behind their idol. So therefore, they'll worship you by serving it. And you're in the land, and until heaven comes down here on earth, until Christ shows up in the hearts of the people and manifests itself out here, through the projections of that, through the people, you're in Satan's world. This is the land of the deceiver. This is the land of the sinners. You're in Sodom and Gomorrah. It's what Lot left. It's everything. It's all that stuff in the Bible you keep hearing about. This is This is what it is. So if you understand this, now you can take your virtues and you convert those into sins through the slinky effect. It's that you're going down a level. So if you go take a slinky and it goes down a level, the bottom becomes the top, top becomes the bottom. So now you take your charity, you're so charitous for everybody else, you do for so many else, you can't take care of yourself, and that's called sloth. You don't take care of yourself. You don't worry about yourself. You're not concerned about yourself because you know the Spirit's working out for you. But in Satan's world, if you're so charitous, it's called sloth. So now you have a gluttony for charity too. So it all comes back down to gluttony. Every sin will always end up in gluttony. Every one of them. You know, greed, lust, whatever the other ones are. All they end up is gluttony because you can't get enough greed to satiate your soul. Therefore, you become gluttonous for greed. You can't get enough lust to satiate your soul. There's still something there, so you become gluttonous for it. Same thing with charity. And this is what Christ was saying, is you have to be so willing to sacrifice for others that you're willing to give your own life to offer them salvation. And that's really what this is. That's really what he did on the cross. When he was on the cross, the two thieves, he said, he gave both choices. Come with me, or you shall perish, or you can bear your own burdens. One thief said, no, I'm happy up here. The other one said, I'll go with you. Yeah, that's what it is. Even at the moment of death, you still have that salvation around you. It's just learning that you accept that what you're doing is for the best for everybody. It's not for yourself, it's for everybody but yourself. And if you approach matters this way, you can become an advocate for those who can't speak or those who don't even know they have a voice yet. And that's what you're doing. You're learning to don the sword and the shield of God. So you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil. And that's where you're in. You're in the valley of the shadow of death. Everything around you is death.
Babylon.
It's Babylon. And Babylon is Nimrod. I still believe Nimrod created the tower on God's will. He said, build it up, get all these heathens in here, and I'm going to collapse it down and scatter around. They can Babylon forever for all I care. And that's what they've been doing. They've got 100 and some odd languages, 1,000 other little things. It's all these people babbling on, trying to say, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right. Nobody's right. Everybody's wrong, or else we wouldn't be here. We're all wrong. There's something in us that's wrong that doesn't allow us to transcend out of this prison. Because right now you're in a spiritual matrix prison that just recycles souls over and over again until you get it right. So who knows how long each of us have been here? I have no idea. It just keeps recycling it over and over and over again. So what we have found is this country.
I want to add a little bit to that, Boris, that maybe there are many of us who are here voluntarily.
Yes.
To put the rest to
Correct.
Get out of the prison.
Correct.
Yes, that's true.
There is volunteers here.
I've heard of that. There are volunteers here that come here as teachers. Maybe
right.
you're one of them.
And what happens is when you come here, you're put through this shock system that takes everything you were and gets rid of it. It just goes boom. You're now clean slate. And the ones who came as teachers do remember. They remember slowly, but they remember. Some remember faster than others. Some it takes a lifetime because they get lost in the pleasures of the physical world. And some of the teachers never recover. They wanted to come back, but they get lost in that physical sensation of this plane, because this plane is full of temptations to lead you astray. It's full of it. Everywhere you go, everywhere you're looking, it's some way to lead you away from your purpose and your meaning and your intent of being. And your job is to rediscover that blueprint inside of you. And that's what we call the star. The star is the blueprint. And it's just where you start. You know, that isn't the whole house. It's just like, okay, this is where we're going to start going from. And what we have found is this country has a certain principle, has a certain design behind it. They designed this one because this is a letter from Jefferson to Madison. He said, I set out on this ground, which I suppose to be self-evident, that the earth belongs in Usufruct to the living, that the dead neither have powers nor rights to it. And no man by natural right can oblige the lands occupied or the persons who succeed him in that occupation to the payment of debts contracted by him, else he would eat up the usufruct for generations to come. And then go to the banking one, then the banks and corporations that would rise up around them would then steal the land that their forefathers sought to provide. And this is the essence of the nation, because this right here, that if the usufruct would be eaten up for several generations, then it would be reverse of the principle. So it's reverse of the intent of the nation. So the entire nation is created to protect the usufruct for future generations. Right now, you can see it's not doing that. It's burdening the lands with an unpayable debt that we're hoping that Trump comes through with whatever he's doing there, because he's the only one who has the authority to do it in that world right now. So, and that's what the whole national security apparatus is set up for. The whole national security apparatus is set up to protect the usufruct for future generations. And in the Civil War, I think Lincoln knew he was being beaten. The capitalists had control of the North, the wealthy English capitalists, as they call them, and they had control of the manufacturing centers in the North by stealing all the resources in the South. They issue promissory notes, go take the shit out, go take the stuff over to other countries, make it, come back, sell the goods, make the promissory notes good. How is that any different than today? Yeah. It's the exact same thing. In fact, we found a book called The Way to Outdo England Without Fighting Her. It's on the website. It's a collection of writings from Henry Charles Carey to Sidney Colfax, who was the Speaker of the House at the time. Carey was Lincoln's financial advisor. And there's a letter called Letter 12. I call it the currency letter. The currency letter. Carey currency letter. And in that he outlines exactly what the 63 and 64 Banking Acts did. I mean, it's exact, and you can see the national security apparatus starting to be formed then. And I have it in there. Let me pull it up real quick. But alright, this is the currency question letter, and he goes through the whole thing. I mean, the whole book is amazing. It tells you a whole different story of the Civil War that you've never heard before.
What's the book again?
The way to outdo England without fighting her. And he goes through here, and it's basically what they did is they purchased everything you're going to do in your life. Alright. Tell me if this is any different today. The control of the whole domestic commerce was therefore entirely in the hands of foreigners, who were from hour to hour becoming richer by means of compelling us to remain so dependent upon them that they could always fix the prices at which they would buy the skins and those at which they'd be willing to sell the tails. How is that any different than what's going on today?
It's market rigging.
It's that's why they call it a silver fix.
Right.
They just fix it.
It's market rigging.
It's all fixed.
Sure it is.
So here's the Admiralty law, the law of the president, basically the law of the king. Is the economy and thus the security of the union was threatened by foreign interests. So to counter these threats, its survival and in accordance with the Constitution, the United States is authorized under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10 to take all measures to ensure its citizens or protected persons, as martial law extends all property and persons, be they members of the government or aliens to it, and interest from the acts of terror and all acts of terrorism, which is what the wealthy English colonists, what the wealthy capitalists were doing. It's basically economic terrorism. They take control of it. If you don't do what we want, you starve. That's terrorism. All right, that's plain and simple terrorism. They still do it today. It's called a credit rating. If you don't have a credit rating, you don't use a bank, it's very hard to survive in this world. All right, if you don't use that money and everything else, and you don't have that life you should have, experiencing God's abundance, you're at the mercy of all these guys.
Well, more than that, they make sure you can't get a job, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Just because they don't like you.
Compelled to use.
So what we found.
Absolutely.
Now this is an interesting.
There's no benefit. It's compelled.
This is an interesting brief I found. It was done by the Department of Justice and JAG officials regarding one prisoner named Hamden in Guantanamo Bay. He was trying to say he was not an enemy combatant, or I forget the whole premise, but it was about his detention in Guantanamo. And this part is where it is interesting. Okay. The Supreme Court held in the United States versus Arona, the Supreme Court held that Congress had the authority under the Define and Punish Clause to declare that counterfeiting within the United States of notes of a foreign bank corporation was an offense against the law of nations. And if a thing made punishable is one which the United States are required by their international obligations to use due diligence to prevent, it is an offense against the law of nations. Alright? The whole structure of the United States law is done to bring it in compliance with international law. Every law is the result of a violation of the law of nations. Every single one of them, boiled down to this. And this is right out. This is how they are thinking. This is how the attorneys at the DOJ, the attorneys with the JAG officials, this is how they're thinking when they present their cases. The Court has also recognized the Define and Punish Clause authorizes Congress to derive from the all and broad phrases, principles of international law, more precise code necessary to bring the United States in compliance with the rules governing the international community. Because the United States is just a trust. The Declaration of Independence declared and established a trust. The people fund the trust, supposed to fund the trust by virtue of the last line in the Declaration. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So we each become kings and queens upon the land with a common treasury. We don't know this and comprehend this. The forces on the international level do. This is why we fail. It's our ignorance of what is being established right here in front of us. So you have the Declaration, you have the Articles of Confederation came next, you have the Northwest Ordinance, and you have the Constitution. The Northwest Ordinance is what held all the property of the United States in trust. This is why Minnesota Rule 220 exists, because all the securities go through Minnesota. They go right through Minnesota. The Northwest Ordinance holds all the property of the United States. The United States is being used as a piggy bank for everybody else. They've been leaning up that property for the last 150 years. Because that's all they're doing. They're leaning up property and then they're liquidating liens. They're not accessing the estate. They haven't stolen anything from the people. The people have voluntarily surrendered it by not exercising their right to it. It's like if you have a receipt in your pocket for something at a warehouse and you don't go pick it up, did anybody take it from you? No. And that's what the birth certificate is. The birth certificate is the result of the inaction of the Lieber Code, because the Lieber Code is a trust administration document over the public trust created by Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And when you go back and look at Gettysburg, you see that the blood of all the patriots who spilt their blood in that Civil War is what consecrated the trust. That's what created it. That trust now exists under Article 2, Section 3, or Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. That's the trust, because the first part is the property of the Congress. That's the one they're operating under. That's the only one they care about. They only care about their properties.
That's the section that says that Congress shall have the right to make all needful rules and regulations for the territory or other property
Correct.
Of the United States.
But it's still trustees of the government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's just the people haven't shown up yet. So that's what we're in the process of doing. Everybody's waking up and they're realizing, hey, something's wrong here. This ain't right. You know, how can 5 dudes on the side of the road decide that a homeless man has no right to live? How does that happen? How does the rights of 5 individuals together in a group outweigh the rights of the whole collective, or even one? Because the rights of the many always equal up to the rights of the one. That's a republic. Otherwise, you just have the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and that's utilitarian. That's socialism and communism and all that other crap. You know, that's the Vulcan shit, that little thingamajigger there. So what you have is you have a government that was designed to protect one from the many. What this devolved into is mob rule, because we've lost that way. Nobody's ever seen the Republic of the United States as living today. Nobody. Not one of us. We keep looking at it and going, well, what is it? What is it? Nobody knows. We don't really know what it is. We're going based on little pieces and facts from history about time. Everybody keeps talking about it. What really is it? And the only thing I have discovered is that it's a land where you're your own king. And divine law guides you. That's your common law. Your common law is divine law. The court's common law is whatever they decide. That's the will of man. That's from the light of reason of man. Common law to me is divine law, which is God's laws passed down as you see in nature. You go out in nature, there's certain laws you can't violate in nature. I go run at that wall myself. I can't escape that. There's no man-made law that's going to protect me from not hurting myself if I run into that wall. Same thing. Man's law is something that's mutable. It changes over time based on the feelings of man at the time. That's a mutable law. God's law and nature law is immutable. It doesn't shut up, and it's always speaking to you. And it speaks to your heart because the law is always written on your heart. And there's only one rule. Treat each other as if you were treating yourself.
But isn't all of the seven pillars being reversed right now? All of the pillars of natural law?
They're trying to reverse them so they can supplant themselves up there as supreme beings and gods and whatever else they're trying to do. But they got to learn from Egypt. You can't take a pillar and turn it over end on end because then it just shatters.
Right.
It doesn't work.
So it's like the queen is acting as a king.
Well, the queen was sovereign, and in the little garden thing that she did with Trump, Trump now holds control of all the trusts of the ass. He's now the head trustee of the United States now.
A queen can never be king. That goes against the seven-foot gender.
Okay, she doesn't even matter anymore.
Right.
She doesn't hold this nation in trust anymore. The Vatican has no more hold on this nation. Why do you think they keep bringing up the little boys and girls, and they're starting to try these priests now? If you haven't noticed, the Vatican has told the one that got the shit, you have to go to Australia and deal with this. You have to go over here and deal with this.'re no longer hiding these guys.
So the Public Law 88, 243, and 44 are out the window?
What's that?
In 1963, on December 30th, they panicked and they killed Kennedy, and they established they held a meeting in Rome, and they established Public Law 88, 243, and 244, in which, if you read it, going back to the Treaty of 1213, December 7th, 1213, which King John surrendered. There were three parts of it: a charter, what do they call it? A grant, and a pardon. And that was that by committing Satanism under the Templars, he excommunicated. He went back and gave all of his rights and his heirs' rights. The heirs of the bloodline of King John, the bloodline of the Pope.
Right.
And then if you go back to the British Bill of Rights in 1692, you'll see that they put all the things about Parliament having rights, and
all right.
so what happened is they basically revoked it then, and then they revoked it here to put us under the Treaty of 1213, and every president since.
Okay, as far as I understand, the Treaty of 1213, that's the Papal Bull thing, right? Where they declared anybody who doesn't accept Christ as a heathen.
No. The Treaty of 1213.
That's concession to the
No,
Pope.
the Treaty of 1213 was where King John, who lost all his lands, Juan Sin Tierra, lost all his lands. He took over the laws under Mortman. He brought us under the laws of Mortman and then under the Papacy. And so the Pope's heirs,
I'm going to stop you right there.
Every president has been an heir to King John.
Okay. Under what right and authority did he have to oblige the future of humanity to service to another man?
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
No. Under what right and authority was he acting?
Exactly. He didn't have any right.
He didn't. No, he was doing it.
Therefore, does it really apply? And as far as I understand, the papal bulls from whatever it was declared if you don't accept Christ, you're a heathen. So seems to me, all we have to do is accept and live through Christ, and the Pope has no longer have any power.
I get that.
He no longer has it.
But the Congress, the Senate, ratified that law, making the Treaty of 1213
Again, what right does any of these guys have to put into a law that puts you into service to another man?
They have no right
exactly.
over man. All they have a right over is the person who accepts being a person.
Okay, there you go. The person who accepts being a person. God is no respecter of persons.
Right.
So stop being a person. Stop being that name that was created. That name is a vessel that's waiting for you to animate it. Yes, the Sestike trust.
Correct.
So now you have the heathenistic idol, that person that you're given at birth, and everybody thinks it's them. I'm like, all right, so fine. So what you're telling me, if I'm holding a birth certificate and everybody thinks it's me, the testimony by that person is whoever issued that certificate registers and records people as if they're property. How can that happen?
We allow it.
What gave them that right? Who gave them that right? Because I didn't agree to it. I didn't agree to that. Mom, Dad, the doctor, everybody else decided they were going to agree to it. It's called Sezzian in law.
Actually, they didn't agree to it. My parents didn't understand what they were doing.
And it doesn't matter. They created, a vessel was created. Here's
I-
what I do. I'm not arguing with them. I'm just accepting what is, and I'm not looking to undo it. I'm looking to take it over and utilize it to bring about the kingdom.
I agree with you.
So therefore, if it was created, what do I care it was created? If I understand the intent and purpose behind it, because I'm the only one who can define that. I'm the ultimate settler, because that's a resulting trust. I'm the grantor, settler, and
I agree.
beneficiary of it until it's
That's-
expressed.
That's the way I'm going too.
Right, and until it's expressed. And what you're learning is how to express that trust. And the trust itself is designed to filter all the usufruct to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay out its bills, so it doesn't need the foreign bankers to get its loans. And here, when this dollar comes down and the stock market goes back down to zero, like it did in 1930, right before 33, it's going to have to go through a reset. So everything is going to go down to zero, and then it'll start resetting. And then it'll reset under the new Treasury.
Yeah, this has been the longest time.
Yeah.
The longest 70-year period.
And it's actually 7 years overdue over 7 years overdue, because 1913 was the end of the Federal Reserve Charter. And there's been no dollars printed in the United States after 2013. You will not find one currency. If you find it, it came from out one of the underlying regions, outlying areas, because we found my buddy found in the Federal Reserve publications that they did an overprint. In 2013, they printed up money for the next 7 years. 7 million notes every time in their various denominations. But it's not issued in this country because they don't have authority to do it. It would be a violation of law and their charter. So they can do it in the congressional regions and for their territories, but they can't do it inside the United States. They can't do it inside the nation and domestically. So they have the notes out there. We know they're out there. We saw the purchase orders for them. We saw the accounting for it. We saw the Federal Reserve publications that show they printed it, but they printed it in 2013. They just put new dates on it, and then they issue it out. Because right now, you ain't getting notes that are older than 2013. You're just not. They're all brand new. The ones you get, the nice crisp $100 bills and everything, because they were printed in 2013, they just haven't circulated them. So they're still holding on to it, and that's going to be what keeps everything kind of going. That's why Trump's out there making private trade deals and getting out of all these trilateral commissions and everything else. He's nuking all these trade deals because none of them are going to help us during the time that's the transition. He has to get rid of NAFTA. He has to redo it. He has to redo all the trade deals with China and North Korea and South Korea and all these nations. He has to. He has to pull us out of the UN because the UN is just another global government that destroys the sovereignty of other nations. And he's already said the United Nations is sovereign. He refers to North Korea as a sovereign nation. He refers to Russia as a sovereign nation. China as a sovereign nation. The United States is a sovereign nation. It's a sovereign nation once again. And it's just now they have to go back and you have to undo all the stuff that was done before because you just can't rip it out because it creates a vacuum. And if you rip it out and create chaos, what fills it you don't want. You don't want what's going to fill that chaos because that's when the Hillary and her little buddies take over and they come in and they fill the chaos. You don't want that. It's a systematic way of just undoing everything. And I see exactly what he's doing. He's rolling everything back. And when it's done, I believe you're going to go back to 1825. The government of 1825, which means every constitutional amendment after the 13th is gone. Every single one of them. Because if the 13th one is invalid and the 14th one is invalid, then the 15th, 16th, 17th, all the ones after that are invalid as well.
It puts Spain back in control of about a third of the country.
No.
Well, it does if they didn't abide by the treaties.
Then he'll renegotiate the treaties.
Okay, yeah. Treaties with my family
Okay.
are worth trillions.
Yeah.
So that's what,
Because I know Florida was under treaty with Spain too. East and West Florida came to the U.S. as a way of treaty that was admitted into the Union. But the government itself will go back, and then they'll start. The government will then take over the lands, and it'll be an 1825 government. So your government will be in the post office. The bank will be in the post office. Your loans will come through the post office. That's why he got out of the UPU. Trump's no longer in the UPU because it destroyed all commerce because all these developing nations got all these free stamps and everything else so they could get their tonnage out there, and China's been misusing it for the last 100 years. I mean, they're no longer a developing nation. They're developed. They shouldn't be getting those benefits, but they are. And Germany's getting screwed out of it because all Germany's revenues were pledged in the treaties of Versailles and everything after the war. So Germany's going to be the beneficiary of all that. They're going to get a really good benefit out of it because they're going to get an increase of money flow from all other countries.
Well, and that's why, if you listen to Jim Willey's videos, he says that the reason that Trump has to eliminate the trade deficit, which is why he's renegotiating all these trade agreements, because otherwise, when we go on the gold standard, that they'll be essentially shipping the gold overseas because of the trade deficit.
That's right. And what's going to happen is, if you know, after the war comes to an end, because he's the only one who can declare peace, Liber Code Article 2. The only one who can declare peace is the Commander-in-Chief, or you can come to a special treaty individually, which is how we've been working it recently. We've been working individual small treaties, and that's what the acceptances and returns and the proof of claims is all about.
And that's why Trump gets to be above the Queen.
Yes.
Because second to the King, which was King George, is the Commander-in-Chief. So we have the Commander-in-Chief of the United States.
Well, there's a little bit
second to the King.
Right.
And England ends with no Queen.
Right, and the Queen of England actually loses her throne because she's no longer the bloodline of David. Because right now you're operating under the keys of David.
Yeah.
Vatican was operating under keys of Peter. Rob Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
That's what they were doing. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul, the Pope.
She's an imposter.
She's an imposter, right?
Right.
Well, not only that, she married a Khazarian Jew.
Oh,
She married into the file. Huh?
Prince Philip is a Khazarian Jew.
His bloodline.
I just have two issues you guys raised. I don't believe that the Queen is below Trump. There's no way. She's the head of state of North America. She always will be. She appoints the Governor General in Canada.
Hold on.
And everything goes from that direction.
All right, you guys are looking at land. I'm looking at trust.
No.
The United States of America is a trust.
No,
I understand that. She's no longer the head of the U.S. Trust anymore.
She's no longer the head trustee.
She's no longer the head trustee. Neither is the Vatican. Trump's the head trustee. Why? He's consolidating all the agencies underneath him, and all he's waiting on now is the midterms, so 2/3 Congress can come in January, and they can restore the republic. That's what's going to happen. And when they do that, all hell's going to break loose.
Okay, and the other thing is, what Joe was saying, Germany lost 2 wars. How is it that everything keeps going back to Germany?
In order for Germany to pay reparations, they had to give up everything.
Yeah.
That's why you had Hitler. That's exactly why you had Hitler. And Hitler got Germany out of debt by one thing. He bartered. He didn't use the banker money. He bartered his way out of debt by taking German resources, creating machineries, and going, here, France will give you this for this. These guys will give you this for this. And he got rid of the debt in 6 months. All right? He used the same exact banking system Lincoln used. Exactly the same. He went to an asset-backed system. An asset-backed system doesn't necessarily mean gold and silver.
Right.
It means whatever is being produced by the nation becomes the currency.
He also reestablished a moral basis of the pedophiles.
Correct.
And
And that's what Trump is doing here. He's getting ready to clean these fuckers out, man. These guys who really don't care about this nation and treat it like they can do anything they want, like they have some sort of right to do this. He's going through, and it's going to start cleaning. He can't do it before midterms, which is why all the people saying, where are the arrests? Where are the arrests? He can't do it because that would be an undue influence on elections.
Yeah.
He can't do that. He's not that dumb. All right. He may say a lot of stupid shit out there, but I think a lot of that stupid shit is just to bait people out to get them to argue with him.
Yeah, he's baiting them.
He's baiting them, man. That dude is.
He's a great.
He's great, man. He's great. I love the guy just because
he reels them in.
He does. He throws it out there, and he's just fishing, and all of a sudden he gets bites, and he's got 3 hooks on that thing. He's got 3 people biting at once, and I'm like, yeah, there you go. That's a fisherman.
He's a fisherman.
That's the guy who's fishing on the other side of the boat. You know, in the Bible, you have one guy who fishes the men, the other one who fishes the crap and throws it all back overboard.
For Jesus.
Yeah.
If the election goes well, he'll actually have better of a mandate, and the Democrats are going to have to quiet down and rethink how they're going to approach it.
You got a
But
whole
anyway-
bunch of people out there looking at election fraud too.
Yeah, I know. But right now, what he needs is your help. He needs your help because he cannot do it all. He can put the structure in place. He can lay the foundation. Just like Jesus is the foundation, but Jesus requires all of us to build on that foundation to make it a home. One stone at a time. Each one of you are the stone inside the walls.
What if you've annulled your voter registration card? It doesn't exist for me
A
anymore.
what?
I annulled it.
matter.
I don't
can
care.
Can I vote in the state that I was born?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You don't. I mean,
I just go and vote.
yeah. Just you.
Those are all martial law elections anyway.
All right.
Right, okay.
So it's
This will be the last martial law election. All right. Regardless, one way or the other, it's the last martial law election.
Okay.
All right. It ends this time, and it's over. The next emergency will be a constitutional emergency, which means we're back under Constitution, which is why he tested the 911 broadcast everybody got a text for.
Okay.
I didn't get a text.
You didn't get a text?
Oh,
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
presidential alert.
Yeah, the presidential
That was
alert.
about a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were kind of thinking that Kavanaugh would have been sworn in by then, and then that text would have been not a fake, not just a test, but a live. But they can't do that until the constitutional republic is actually reformed, and he needs 2/3 of Congress to do it because Congress is the one who walked out, not the House, not the Senate. Congress is the one who walked out. All right. The Senate represents the states. The congressional people represent the individual counties and stuff like that inside the state. Right. They're the ones who walked out. So he needs those people to walk back in, and that's why we're waiting on to see what the election results are. And like I said, I think that the whole Democratic thing of being this retardedly dumb they are is all just one giant play, so they can go ahead and do this. And in doing it, they're gonna slam the door on people because people aren't going to understand the new contract. They're going to think it operates under the old way, and it's not going to work that way. It's going to go back to the Declaration and the banking acts and everything else. So really what's going to happen is the people are going to contract back into their slavery when all this is said and done. 60% of them are supposed, according to the biblical structure, 60% are supposed to kill each other off. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've already got my lawn chair and my bag of popcorn, and I'm just going to watch it. Because there ain't not one damn thing you can do about it. All we can do is get the word out, and this is what I try to do.
plus we're going into grand solar minimum, and the last time that happened was 450 years ago, and the population of the earth went down. We had a mini ice age, and the population of the earth went down because of crop failures and all the rest of it. So it's pretty well.
And I still believe, I know how everybody loves the cryptocurrencies, but I believe the cryptocurrency is the predecessor of the mark of the beast. They're testing it out right now. That's all it is a test to make sure it's secure. They're going to leash one. They're going to leash one, and that's how they're going to get everybody during these feast and famine times. And they're going to round them up, put them in their little underground cities, and that's the last you're going to see of those people.
The mark of the beast could be, other than the physical chip,
Mhm.
it could be the mark of your mind.
Correct.
The beast has control of your mind.
Correct. That too.
It has an economic.
Yeah, but it has economic undertones, it has the spiritual undertones, it's all that stuff. You know, I know that everybody's into this crypto thing and thinks it's not the banks have no control over it. No, the banks are fully in control of this. They always have been. It's just another illusion. It's just another illusion that they're giving to everybody. And this is where we are now. This is Pee Wee Cole, United States versus Pee Wee Cole. This came out of Rod Class's talk show. We heard it. My buddy heard it one day and told us about it. And this is their common law. Okay, this is the court's common law. So what it is since, in this case was 1955, to avert a coal strike, the United States government came into Pee Wee Coal, took it over. Pee Wee Coal's owners came and said, well, now you owe us for payments because you took possession and operated control. Supreme Court ruled with them. So since the United States government came in on their own volition to take possession and operate control, they became proprietor of that. Therefore, they're subject to all the status and liabilities thereof. Same thing with the birth event. It was not my economic choice to put my birth certificate into the record, to register and record my choice. Therefore, by way of operation of law, the Social Security Act of 1936, the Libra Code itself, to register, to take the pledge of the people and put that into their coffers, put it into their books. Then the United States, by way of act of Congress, decided to acquire an interest under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, or 17. So they acquired an interest in land, me, an inhabitant. Every one of you are inhabitants upon this land. So they acquired an interest in an inhabitant, and an inhabitant is land by definition. It's part of the land. So they acquired an interest in each one of you, and the most interest they can ever require without total enslavement is usufruct. That's it. It's the most, that is the ultimate step before slavery.
Which is just an interest.
Which is just an interest.
Without the power of disposal,
correct.
Which is the power of disposal,
correct.
Is the real ownership.
Yeah, and when you look at usufruct, it goes back to Roman law. And in Roman society, the slaves had the usufruct. They had all the money, had all the wealth, had all the tools, had all the resources. The Congress and the nobles at the time, the Senate and the landowners in Rome, dictated what the slaves built. Caesar dictated it. He was the naked owner. He had disposal rights over everything. He just told these guys what to do. They needed the money, they needed the tools, and they needed the resources to do it. So the usufruct was born. That's where it comes from. And it was reborn in Russia in the 1600s. Russia was undergoing something with the nobles where their crops were failing. And the nobles would come in and work the serfs. And then right before the harvest time, if the harvest wasn't up to expectations, they'd cut them loose. Well, this resulted in a mass starvation in Russia, and Russia almost perished. They were resorting to cannibalism of their sons and daughters and their wives, and it was nasty times. And this guy named Boris Godunov, his nephew was killed during a riot or something, and he said enough of this shit. So he got all the peasants up, all the non-nobles, and they rose up, and they brought about something called, believe it or not, the Law of Boris.
The law of what?
Law of Boris. And it's all built on usufruct. And they implemented it, and it saved Russia at the time. So basically they said if the noble is going to use the serf to harvest his land and profit from him, that noble then must provide him food, shelter, and clothing. Food, shelter, clothing, and all the other stuff to make sure that the dignity of the worker was protected. So over the periods of Russia, Catherine the Great and all the other ones, they kind of subverted it and everything else. And then Nicholas was the one who totally revived it and what was our Civil War. He's the one who blockaded the ports of the South to prevent the English from funding the South. And that's where Seward's Folly comes in, where they rented Alaska for 99 years. It was only supposed to be a 99-year lease, a usufruct of Alaska. So they gave them $3 million in gold because there's no constitutional privilege to do it, but that's where it all came from. But Russia, I think, at the same time U.S. was going through its Civil War, was facing something similar. But I don't have the history of that. But I think it was the same time it was happening, because Russia and the United States have very deep ties with each other.
Yeah.
Always have, always will. You know, and that's why it's really weird to see Putin and Trump like this, and I'm like, well, that means someone's controlled opposition on one side.
Yeah.
But this is where it came from. So
Communism came from Ohio.
yeah. Now, since your birth certificates were done at birth, there's an incomplete delivery. Satanic law is where two people go to the site of land and say, oh, you have it now. That's a Satanic law. That's what they did with the Indians and everybody else. They went with the site of land, said, oh, okay, you have the land, and we give the Indians these treaties. The Indians didn't understand the treaties. They didn't understand that it's all about acceptance and then return. So they accepted the treaty, but they never returned it. And I talked to the Cherokee about this. Their lands, the 16 tribes, are now scattered. They're never going to get it together if they don't get together. But I talked with their elders, and they called me up, and we were talking with them. And I said, look, the reason you all believe you got screwed is because you didn't know who you were dealing with. You didn't know you were dealing with someone who needed you to ratify the contract and send it back. Because to a Cherokee, if two people had a dispute, they put a pole in the ground. Both people put their stuff that was in dispute by the pole. They had a decision, and both people walked away with whatever they walked away with. Boom. That was how they did their decisions. So they were assuming that they were still operating on that level, above the ground. And it's like, no, you're dealing with the cult of death. So you have an above ground deal and you have a below ground deal. So the above ground deal is what they offered them. They offered them a treaty of gold, blah, 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 and all that other shit in exchange for surface rights. What they didn't understand is they were supposed to return that back to them as a deposit into the treaty itself to fund the treaty, because the treaty is just a trust, so that treaty remained unfunded. That's what they didn't do. And that's what your birth certificate is. It's actually a treaty with the United States to end the martial law against you. Remember, Liber Code Article 2. The United States has to remain as a condition of the same, but you can develop your own treaty of peace. And the treaty of peace is understand that they own the Usufruct. They have legal right to you. That's their legal title. You have beneficial interest, which is equity. So you must surrender, you must deliver the equity to complete the deal, which is where the release of the beneficial interest comes about, like the guys in Canada have done. The story is his guy's son went into court on a traffic matter and said, I'm here, this is evidence not of my identity but of my interest, and I'm releasing my interest to you for settlement of all charges. Gone. Disappeared. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then that corresponds with the legal title is the Usufruct, because that's all the profits and everything else. That's what they care about.
And it's just a copy of the birth certificate.
Just a copy. You don't need the whole birth certificate, because you're the holder of the receipt. I can take a receipt, if I'm going to go claim the property out of the trust, I need the receipt. But if I'm just going to release my interest in it to you for you to use at the moment, I just have to give you a copy of the receipt. Because who are the only two people that can hold that receipt, who can get it? Me and some judge. That's it. That's the only two people that can get that, me and the banker. And the banker has to, bankers, and why he can acquire it. Me, I just have to show up and say, can I have that? And they give it to you without notice of any adverse claim. So they give you a financial asset, which is the equity behind that. And when you go into the QSIP numbers and stuff like that, you find out there's QSIP numbers issued on a birth certificate. There's QSIP numbers issued on your birth certificate, Social Security card, driver's license, every court case. We believe there's every bank account has one.
They're printed on bond paper.
Yeah.
That's all important.
All that stuff. So once you get your QSIPs, you realize that that's a financial asset, because a financial asset is defined as an obligation or share in a person or corporation that's traded on the securities markets. Done. That's a financial asset at that point. And the QSIP is just the evidence of it. It has no real intrinsic value other than it shows the evidence that you're holding onto a financial asset that you have a beneficial interest in. They're the beneficial owner of it. They own the right to derive all the profits from it, but I hold the beneficial interest and I have disposal rights of that same security, so I can use it in any matter I need to settle up any legal obligation I may have when the state is involved. Now, between each one of you and me, we can't do that. That becomes private agreements with each other. But when you're talking about this thing called state, the bank, the actual Treasury, I call it the Storehouse. The Storehouse and God's government. The big Lord in the Bible is the government on earth. Is Lord's government on earth.
If they stole from you and you can prove that they stole that, then you can say, well, I have $120 million
Okay.
deal.
What about if you said, instead of stole, what about you use the word purchase? They purchased it from you. Why? Because purchase is defined as taking by pledge, by any other reason that creates a voluntary interest in property. So if you treat it as they purchase it, now they owe you a duty and reciprocation.
Okay.
Because you have to prove they stole it.
Then they can give
Right.
Then I
But
can
you
get
don't
it
have
back.
Then you can get it back. Now you don't want it back. You want it to remain in their possession because you took it without notice of adverse claim. Adverse claim means they're holding it and it doesn't violate your rights. But as soon as it violates your rights, now it's adverse possession by a trustee over infant estate. Because that name, that birth certificate, is always a child and it's always an infant. Why? Because the definition of child is what? Is person, corporation, trust, everything else. Definition of infant is human being, child, person, trust, corporations. And the infant member of the Homo sapiens species at any stage of development. That's what they define person as. That trust is always a child and it's an infant. Therefore, when they start moving adversely against you and start saying no, or identifying you as that, they're actually engaged in human and child trafficking at that point in time.
And then what you mentioned about the development, when you say development, that's actually 1 USC.
1 USC 8.
A, which
Eight.
is 8?
8.
Right. Which is the beginning of the U.S. code.
Correct.
So they're laying it out right there.
And same
where
thing
it's
with
allowed.
Florida. Florida defines it at 1.103, I think it is.
So-
Or 1.03 or whatever.
So when you go in there and say, this, I don't have this as identification, I have this as evidence of
My interest.
then, and I want to, and I'll surrender whatever interest I have to
Mhm.
you to settle this matter, they are literally forced to go ahead and
They
settle
have
it.
to, or else they're in adverse possession of an infant estate
And child trafficking.
and child trafficking.
That's right. And so then.
And human, it's human and child trafficking,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
human being is defined as the infant.
Right.
So human and child trafficking is all about the misuse of this property.
Right.
It's all accounting. Everything you're looking at, all the global warming, everything you're looking at is all accounting terms. When I watch TV, I don't see that they're talking about the earth. I see they're talking about ledgers and accounts and all this other stuff. I mean, it's just amazing what they're actually telling you right in front of your face when you sit down and look, that it's not the literal meaning of what they're saying. It's always something symbolic behind it, just like the Bible. Bible's not always literal in what it says. You have to read it and understand, oh, they're talking about something else.
Yeah, it's written on multiple levels.
And
What
what
do you know about contra accuser?
Excuse me?
Contra accuser?
What's contra accuser?
I just looked it up. For example, contra accuser is set up to complete reorganization function.
There you go. That would be the bankruptcy CUSIPs. Chapter 11.
It says whenever a security is moved one side, gets the credit, the other the debit. Contra accuser.
Yeah. So you have the CUSIP showing that it's a credit. Now you want the contra, the contrary, the equal and opposite reaction. That's divine law again. There's always an equal and opposite reaction to every action. Always. Equal and opposite reaction. I move forward to that wall with my fist. The wall takes my fist and sends that energy back to my fist and breaks my bones. That's what's happening there in that transaction. I was supposed to break the wall, but the opposite effect happened. My bones break. So when you're looking at this, look at everything as though you're showing them that they have something deposited into their account. The promissory note you give to a mortgage is tender of payment to secure the mortgage. So therefore now they owe you what? Reciprocation on it, a contra note. If it's contra CUSIP, it's contra note. So they owe you a contra promissory note, which is the credit to the mortgage for the payment of the note. Because if they go into court, I'm going to ask the judge, gee, judge, what thing are they demanding in tender of payment? Judge can't answer that. He cannot answer that without committing treason. A, he's going to be against public policy and commit treason, or B, he's going to be against the Constitution and create treason. Because the only thing a state can issue, or the state can demand in payment of, and demand in tender of payment. Use those words, in tender of payment. It's not for payment or as payment or anything. It's in tender of payment. Those are the words.
You have to use their words.
These are the words that they expect to hear. Because if you say payment, they're going to say anything they want. But if you tender in payment, now you have a whole other issue, because you issued that promissory note in tender of payment. So when they go to foreclosure, they admit they got the note, right? Does it matter if it's real or not? Don't care.
No.
Do not care.
Well, you can tender anything.
You can tender, yeah, I know.
That's the point.
But the thing is they're going in saying you gave a promissory note. Well, fine. You just admit you got that in tender of payment. Okay? Now you're going to foreclose on the mortgage. So therefore, you're denying the mortgage now. So you got to give me my securities back. You can't have both. So you can have the house. I don't care about the house. Give me give me the securities back along with all the profits. Because you're the one foreclosing. You're the one foreclosing on the mortgage.
Yeah, you never do.
Now, either they do that, all right, either they give you your security back, or they give a notice of release on the mortgage, or you sit there and ask the court, what thing is being demanded in tender of payment? Because the promissory note was given in tender of payment in lieu of gold and silver, and the mortgage was securitized in lieu of transfer of title. Because all title is held in abeyance too. The most you're ever going to get on anything is certificate of title. Look at your car title. It's just a certificate of title. What does that mean? It means, oh, you have a certificate the title exists, but we don't have it. It's somewhere else. It's somewhere else.
We don't care where
Yeah,
it is.
it's somewhere else. Everybody says they want the MCO. I'm like, all right, that's just an MCO, but then you hold all the usufructory duties. Why not give it over to the one who's going to profit from it right away, and now you don't have the slavery of taking care of the property? Because ownership has been outlawed, so only outlaws claim ownership. So you outlawed, you just gave up the one thing that's binding you to the material world, which is what? Your right to service the material world. Why do I want to service the material world when I can service the spiritual world and have disposal of everything and build a world in God's image? Showing Him the respect for the love and life He gave me by giving Him a world that's full of love and life. Why bind yourself to it in service to it? Because that's mammon. That's the material world. That drags you down in the material world and releases your frequency is supposed to be up here in the spiritual, and it puts you down on the physical plane. Now you're no better than an animal seeking survival. Because that's what money teaches. Money teaches that the universe is scarce. It's like any other thing of value. It's scarce. So it teaches you scarcity. So what is scarcity? Scarcity. So they keep you living in scarcity, which is in the state of fear.
Sure.
It's the capital of the state of fear. Scarcity is the capital of the state of fear. And that's what they're doing with money. I don't care if they use gold, silver, money, seashells, stick. I don't care what it is. It's irrelevant. It's the fact that someone is trying to teach you that the universe is not full of abundance and you're not entitled to it. You must pay for your way. That's a slave mentality. And this is what's been cultivated on this planet for how many thousands of years, I don't know. But it's coming to that time that in the grand universal structure of things, in our galaxy little spiral thing, we're coming out of that death cycle and coming into the new spring, galactically. On the Earth, it's showing up here as a raise in consciousness once again, but you're coming out of a death cycle into, coming out of the fall, the winter, and new growth starts occurring. So we're starting to come up through the dirt and everything else.
We're pretty close to when the kingdom of Christ comes, because it's been 3,600 years almost since the last time Niburi was here, which is a light twin that you can't see.
Right. So now it's going to come from within. Christ, like I said, I still believe it. It's not going to be a dude from above. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the consciousness from within that man takes into his heart, and his heart projects the world around him. So that's when Christ will show up, when the hearts of man project them out. Because it's all light anyway.
Sorry, I just had a quick question as well, because the teachings or that information kind of it's opposite to what the Constitution might say, in the fact that we have rights to property and we have rights to this.
All right, here's the deal with the Constitution, people are getting. Your rights are not derived from the Constitution.
No, I got that.
All right, so therefore, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing adverse to it, because the rights in the Constitution are not rights for you, it's limitations on the debt collectors. Because the Constitution is just a debt collection document. Anybody who doubts it, go read Amendment 6. Or Section 6, or whatever it is, where the debts of England before the war, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's just a debt collection document.
He's exactly right. And I would just like to add that if you read in the New Testament, it talks about the early Christians having all things in common.
Right.
And that's what he's also talking about with this Usufruct.
Yeah.
And
the Usufruct, actually, when you understand what they've done, it actually, the birth certificate in accepting this is actually fulfillment of the Old Testament law under Malachi 7 through 11. Malachi 3. Malachi 3. Yeah. Because Malachi 3 told everybody, reads that you and your nations are put under a curse for everything you took from God. And by using money for your own glory, accepting that glory for yourself, you took all the glory that was to go to God into subduing the earth. You subdue the earth for yourself, not for Him. I've subdued it to make my life better, not everybody else's, not his life, not his world. And that's what we've done. And all these things they keep showing you, all the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and the movie stars and the actors and all these rappers and everything else with all this money, and they're doing this shit and wearing all that jewelry. All that's done to tempt you into saying that this is the life I want. That's an external life. That's a materialistic world life, and that just keeps you bound to servicing it. That keeps you in service to Mammon, puts you in service to the Prince of Air, keeps you in service to the illusion. Because the illusion is not real. The illusion is the result of the actions.
Can I ask a question then in relation to, for instance, the rights to travel that people are talking about? The basis of that is that it's our property, it's our private property.
Right, and the law of nations agrees with you.
So the fact that there is a certificate of title already in existence, the MSO or MCO, depending on your preference, the government, in essence, then has title ownership of that. So how can it be
All right.
our private property?
Okay, now here's the deal. If you haven't surrendered a beneficial interest, if you haven't completed delivery at birth, then what they're saying is you're still holding the interest, holding the usufruct or interest. So every time someone comes out with a bill, they're saying you're the usufruct. Why? Well, you're using that name. We expected something to be delivered to us. I can't take it from you. I can purchase the interest, but it's held in trust. But you have to complete that trust. You have to complete your acceptance of Christ. That name operates as if it were Christ here on earth. God operates as if it were your Father here on earth. Because that all capital Lord is the physical manifestation of God here on earth. It's His government here on earth. He's the military, but He's also the one who delivers. The military is also the one that delivers the blessings. The Lord's the one who delivers the blessings. The all capital Lord. You pay homage to Jesus, you pay homage to God by doing those works and accepting it. But what has been created is the government here on earth, and it's been designed by Satan. It's been built by Satan because he's in service to God. And he said, all right, if these guys aren't going to follow God, I'm going to make them work for God, and they're not even going to know it.
But that falls under God as the grand architect of the universe.
Yes.
So God too.
What?
God too.
What's God too?
That's the grand architect of the universe.
Okay.
GATU.
And so that is what has been under the Templar belief system for thousands of years.
Okay.
So if you go look at it, the Templar and then the Freemason is a lower level of Templar belief.
Yeah. But really what they're doing is they're building God's design here on earth. I mean, it's all built by Satan's minions. Satan's the one who fell here on earth with his angels. It's, what is it, Leviticus?
2/3, yeah.
Is it Leviticus where it says that the fallen angels came down and they separated the nation? They all received the nations. To each one receiving, the people were supposed to receive their nations, but the fallen angels were to receive the people and lead them back to God. I'm not sure exactly which book that is, but I know I've read that. My buddy pointed it out.
Sure.
And
God's Son in angel form was Lucifer.
Yeah.
God's Son in physical form was Christ.
Right.
I think he's also talking about, like when you were talking about the constitutional rights, well, if you read what the courts are saying, that there's certain words that are in the Constitution which brings the common law of England here. Mm-hmm. And so then we have those common law rights. But what he's talking about with this usufruct is really just dealings with the government or any governmental...
No, I'm talking about dealings with each other, too.
Oh,
It's dealings with me and him. If we were to develop a contract, I would be usufruct to him, he would be usufruct to me according to the terms of the contract. He's naked owner of himself. He can still do anything he wants with himself. He just can't impede the usufruct that we just agreed to. Same thing with a husband and wife.
But he can't use that Sesticate trust account to set
It doesn't matter. That's one aspect of everything. I'm talking usufruct relates to every relationship you'll ever have on this planet and every relationship with everything on the planet. Everything is usufruct of everything. It's all usufruct. The animal, the lion is usufruct of the gazelle. The gazelle is usufruct of the earth. The zebra and the gazelle are usufruct of each other. Everything has this usufructive relationship with each other. They're all naked owners of themselves. The gazelles can be gazelles. The zebras are zebras. They can do anything they want with that herd. Same thing with the pride of the lions. They can do anything they want. But they're all usufruct of each other. They're all usufruct of the whole. Everything. A husband and wife is the same way. A husband is usufruct of his wife. He cannot alter her substance. He can't control her. She's going to go do whatever she wants. Anybody try to control a woman? Doesn't work.
I tried.
It's like trying to control a cat. You can't control a cat. It doesn't work that way. And then the wife is usufruct of the husband. She can't control him. Any woman try to change a man? How does that work out for you?
Not too good.
How does that work?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work out too well. If everybody understood this, understand that the man can be whatever image he decides to create of himself. The wife is going to be usufruct if she gets the fruit. If she married into a cheating, lying husband, guess what? She gets the fruit of that cheating, lying husband. He's still going to be a cheating, lying husband. She just has the fruit of it. And what does he get? He gets the fruit of the woman that he married, which now she becomes, in reaction to all this, she becomes a complaining bitch, and he complains against him, and now they're fighting with each other because the usufructs don't match. The original contract was over because the original contract is to love, honor, obey each other until death do you part. Love, honor, and obey does not mean change the substance of each other.
But there's, if you go under a Christian marriage, there's very specific contractual rights under a Christian marriage.
Right, and that's part of
And
it.
if you verbally put those forth, then you have specified the terms.
Correct, and now you have a covenant with God.
Right.
Two people enter into a usufruct relationship to each other. The whole of the union is now usufruct of God. So therefore, when you get divorced in a court, you had better go up and see God to ask Him for permission because you're still married. And if God does not dissolve the marriage, then you still are married. So if you both get remarried, you both are adulterers.
That's right.
Or if you go and it's what it is. That's the way it works. You made a covenant before the Holy Spirit of all spirit. Do you think that a man's court can undo that?
No.
The fuck kind of bullshit thinking is that? That's the thinking that got us into trouble in this world, thinking that man could make his laws. That's Satan saying that. Satan's I've read some things where Satan's last words to God were, God asked him, do you want to make the laws? He goes, no, I'll let man do it. They can do a good enough job.
You're saying what kind of thinking is that? That's the way we've been taught to think.
Correct. That's the Satanist way of thinking, that this judge can absolve anything divine. How does that work?
But that's also Church of England.
I don't care.
They created divorce in order to have. Henry VIII was afraid of my family, the Aragon family, and they basically didn't want us to kill him.
Yeah, they just made it up.
So he made up a new law, the Godless Satanist Act.
Correct.
But basically in court, they're only handling the legal contract.
They're only handling the legal contract. The equitable contract, because we went up and there's this saying going around that legal is the undoing of God's law, or something like that. Someone was posting that around. So I went around and I looked at all. I went down to Stetson Law, which is like one of the best law libraries we have in Florida, and I live down the road from it. So I went down there one day.
Where is it?
Gulfport, Florida. Right, it's just south of St. Pete, which is just west of Tampa. Yeah, so it's down there, and I was thinking about actually going there at one point in my youth, but
What's the name of it?
Stetson Law. Stetson Law has one of the
Stetson University.
Yeah, Stetson University. It has so out of there you get They have some of the best law writers come out of that school.
Well, I tell you, the thing that you're talking about, the interest, the beneficial interest, that you guys had turned this on by having. I think you had us look at that talk show.
Yeah, that's Vic. That's Vic Beck out of Canada. He goes by Adam or Hallow or whatever.
That was eliminated 2 days ago from the hacking 2 days ago. They took that out. There were a bunch of things that got stolen and eliminated from me before I came on this trip.
Oh, I see.
And it's specifically doing with the intent of this trip was to go down to Washington, get my birth certificate, and also register my nation, my micronation, the St. Francis Kingdom, so that I can put into probate the 20 leagues by 20 leagues around the city of San Francisco, to take back that use and that benefit for my family.
Okay.
And so with that, it's, and I thought, and I also put a contract in to give Trump or the government 1/3 interest, which would be, since it's for fraud, $4.8 trillion, so they could have 1.8
Okay.
trillion, or 1/3 of it to go back and help the country.
Yeah.
And by restoring all the benefit to my family.
Okay.
So it's just, and all of a sudden things are changing because a lot of people are going to get in trouble in Florida. I mean, a lot of people could be hung.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we got the triangle. I mean, I think every state has a triangle of counties.
Right.
Where the corruption occurs. Ours is Polk, Highlands, and Hardee's. Pinellas on the outskirts, Hillsborough on the outskirts, and all that stuff. But it's Polk, Highlands, and Hardee's. Those are the corrupt ones. Up near Tallahassee, near Leon, and all the other ones. It gets a little bit.
The circuit is where the CIA has been bringing in cocaine, in hundreds of billions of dollars worth of cocaine through that circuit.
Yeah, they come up through Miami. It goes in. Once it hits there, it goes all over the place. But
no, they bring it in by airplanes. They bring it in by sea. They just Fort Pierce. It's just massive amounts of cocaine coming through those counties.
Yeah, I know. That's why you've had everybody. The Bushes and the Clintons and some others. They wanted to take over Texas. if whoever controls Texas, California, Florida, and New York controls the drug trade in America.
Well,
The
Baltimore was a
politicians.
big spot for heroin.
Yeah.
It has been since.
But it's Florida, New York, Florida because it's right there by Puerto Rico. Once you get into Puerto Rico, it's no longer traceable.
But the British have controlled heroin since the Tonkin
Wow,
Treaty, 1849.
Yeah, they've done a lot more than that. But now we're coming down to the point that all that shit is going away because when it all renews, every treaty it's all done, everything is done. It's going back and resetting everything. The most you're going to have here is an administrative side of the trust here because that was the trust that was created that's necessary within the law of nations so you don't get subjected to dictators and kings and all the other stuff. And any nation can join this.
Yeah, have you ever read the Charter of the United Nations? It's completely against all law, law.
I know. That's why Trump got out of it. So, but now we have the United States through the Articles of Confederation. Anybody can join. Any nation can join this nation, the nation of the United States of America, because all it is a trust. It's a trust within the sphere of the law of nations. It was created for this purpose. And they've been getting all the laws and everything regulated so it's in harmony with international law, so it doesn't adversely affect it. So nations can have their own free will, or they can all band together and join this one and experience the bounties. Because this is the New Jerusalem. America is the New Jerusalem. It's New Israel. The Israel down there in the Mideast, that's the false one. Let that one get turned into glass. Who really cares? They're going to make that into a parking lot one day. Radioactive parking lot.
Well, then why is the dinar going to be the major currency?
Dinar's not going to be the currency. That's a fallacy.
Yeah.
They've been holding on to that thing for so. I keep hearing everybody saying the dinar. Where the hell is it?
Obama got rich on that one.
Man, next month it'll come in.
Obama got rich on that one.
Yeah. But now we come into the new contract. This is the new covenant, the new contract. And if you understand that as an inhabitant on this earth, you have no attachment to it other than make it better and spread the word of God like you're instructed under the Adamic covenant. That's what our job was, to spread the word of God, to subdue the earth in His name. Well, subdue means take over military. It's take over. We're supposed to take over, not sit back and go, well, this is this, this is this, this and this, and I'm going to accept that. Fuck. No. It's all for His glory. And you're kings now. So any contract there was with kings before is null and void. There are no more king contracts. The only king contract is the one with Jesus. He's the king of the new kingdom. That's the only contract there is. And His is, follow me, you'll be ambassadors with me and co-creators and co-heirs of that kingdom. And that's what we're here to learn, is how to be co-creators. You can't be a creator if you do not give your usufruct to the creation, or else man would be floating around on white space. He would have nothing. If God did not give us His usufruct, we would have nothing. Therefore, learn from the one who created it all, and understand, in order to breathe life into your creation, you must give it all your fruit. So you can dictate what your creation does. You know, if God wanted to, He could sing an asteroid to Earth, and there ain't a damn thing any one of us can do about it. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to experience the fruits of that. Good, bad, indifferent is irrelevant. You're getting the fruits. Asteroid slams into the Earth, you get the result. That's what the usufruct is, the result. I eat an apple, the usufruct is what comes out the other end. Okay, that's what it is. So that's what you're doing with government, is you're giving them your usufruct of the earth. So whatever you do with God's green earth, the government now has it in their coffers as an asset they can use to barter and trade as if it were gold and silver, because that's all gold and silver. It's just something from the earth. It's just a product came from the earth. It's us in our minds. We became the money changers who said that we need to harvest fish from the ocean and cut down His trees to get this thing called money. We're the money changers. The banks are just the opportunists. They're just the predators. They preyed upon us turning our backs to God. And that's where the ignorance comes from, because ignorance means we turned our back to God. That's what Hosea reads. And everybody uses that Hosea 4. So go read the whole thing. It tells you right there. You turned your back away from God, now you will experience the wrath of the Lord because these people perish because of their ignorance. because they turned away from this life. They turned their way from this and sought for their own personal development, their own personal gain without thinking of everybody else around them. Which is what you see in all these self-help things. Everything on the air about self-help has nothing to do with the whole. Very little of it ever talks about the whole. It talks about what you get out of it. I can get all these riches and wealth coming my way. I mean, how adverse to the teachings of Christ is that? He gave it all away. He gave everything away. He did for everybody else around him. And that's what we must do. And that's how you get true fullness of self. Because I've tried the self-help stuff. The only time I'm happy is when I'm doing this. That's it. When I'm doing this and I'm giving the word out there, that's the only time I feel fulfilled. Every other time is I'm searching for something and it depresses the shit out of me. And my girl and I have arguments over it, and I go, look, this is the only time I'm happy is when I'm doing this. Everything else you're trying to get me to do takes me further away from this and makes me unhappy. So either you're coming with me or you're going to be left behind.
Don't you love me?
Yeah. And then you get the guilt. But that's what it's all about.
Well, they asked me, like, when's the last time you took vacation? I said, I'm on vacation when I play the drums. That's the gift to me.
That's right.
You're on vacation.
I'm on vacation right now. I'm on vacation now while I do my work.
You will never feel any better than what you do right now.
No, I won't.
This enlivens you. He built you for this, right? He built you.
He must have, because some of this stuff really sounds like I make it up as I go along.
Well, then there's a question I have for you. To get the birth certificate and turn it back in, do you need to establish with the IRS first your status?
All right. What do you think your status is?
My status? I'm foreign to the United States Corporation.
Okay.
And I'm an inhabitant. I'm not a resident. And I'm not.
Prove you're not a resident. That's what they're going to say. Prove you're not a resident. How do you prove a negative?
No, it's actually the burden of proof is on
their part.
Well, you're the one making the claim right now.
Right. I suppose.
See, I remember this guy, Mark Stevens. You know him, the no state thing.
Right.
Evidently, his story goes that he went into the IRS summoned him into court in the 70s, 74, 76, whatever year it was. And the prosecutor's like, well, all U.S. citizens have to pay taxes. And what evidence do you have I'm a U.S. citizen? And they haven't bothered him since. He's been still waiting for the answer.
Right, and he won't get it.
And he's never going to get that. Because here's the deal.
So
that any alien being a free white person may be admitted to become a citizen of the United States or any of them on the following condition and not otherwise. You cannot be a U.S. citizen just by virtue of getting a license. That's actually a fraudulent. That's actually fraud. But under this military system, it's excluded because martial law extends to everybody, be either part of the government or aliens to it. So the license itself is a martial law item.
What happens with a license, though, is there's a box that says U.S. citizen, and we check it.
See, that's actually not false, because that name you're using is the U.S. citizen. That's what's created. The Sesteke Trust, the U.S. citizen is a co-beneficiary and a co-trustee of the Sesteke Trust called U.S. Inc.
Well, then how could they do that if I was not subject to either one when I was born?
They just created it.
Both parents were different.
By presumption.
All right. Did you get born in a hospital in the U.S.?
I got born in Washington City, Maryland, which is for U.S. citizens. They call it the District of Columbia.
All right. The reason behind that is because of the Lieber Code. And
what year? Before you go anywhere else, what year was that statute approved?
1802.
This is 1802.
April 14th,
Chapter 47.
47.
And it's been since updated, but they never got rid of you have to go before a district court and take an oath renouncing all allegiances to all planetary powers and everything. So you have to give up your allegiance to God in order to become a U.S. citizen. All right? Then you become civilly dead. Because why?
Okay.
Why do you become civilly dead when you give up your oath to God? Why is it?
You got no source of life.
Nope. Well, yeah, that's it. But why?
Usufruct?
No. Because to give up your oath to God is to eat of the tree of good and evil. You've renounced life for doing good and evil. So you became debtor and creditor. Debtor and creditor is the same thing as good and evil. So when you chose to become a
The
U.S.
slave law
citizen,
is the good. No,
Huh?
the good. There's a whole slave law is the book of the knowledge.
there you go. That's what it is. So what we did,
What is it?
what-
I didn't hear it.
what the whole
book of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what. If you go back to the king of Shinar, they had the slave laws, but it was the abuse of the slave laws to create slaves involuntarily that became the knowledge of good.
correct.
Book of good and
So
evil.
if you want to know good and evil, you want to know debt and credit, you want to make those judgments, then ye yourself shall be judged. That's the curse of Genesis 3. That's what we find ourselves under, because good and evil is all a judgment.
Because the
It's
code
all
of
it's all based on perception. It's all based on what you believe. But
The code of Hammurabi was, the king of Shinar in the Bible.
yeah,
And so
Okay.
he established that code, and it was to be done honorably.
right.
We've got a dishonorable system.
But remember, no. The system is not dishonorable. The system is neutral. The people operating it are.
Right, correct.
It's like saying, I have a hammer in my hand. I can use it honorably and use it to build. I can use it dishonorably and use it to destroy. Or same thing with a car, a gun, anything.
Capricious and arbitrary rules.
Yeah.
Orders.
And that's what good and evil is. Good and evil is all based on the feelings of the day. That's that one Mark Passio talked about the, what was it?
So that's why they couldn't arrest me today, because I told them that my name is Manuel III. I don't have a middle name. I don't have a last name. It's against my religion to have either of those.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't, and I wouldn't produce some identification to state. I said my birth certificate was done fraudulently, and that because that's not my name, it can't be used.
Well, the birth
And so
certificate thing.
so they impounded the car
Okay.
because of a.
In order to get your car out, in order to live in this, you're going to have to adopt some other viewpoints, because it doesn't matter if the birth certificate is fraudulent or not. It doesn't identify you. It identifies your beneficial interest in that property.
Right.
And that's how you have to start presenting it. Who cares if they call you by? And here's another thing: once they start calling you by that name on the birth certificate, they just triggered a national security apparatus in your favor, because this national security apparatus says Seste Que Trust. What happens when the dead dude is found in a Seste Que Trust? Everything reverts back to him, right? Mm-hmm. So therefore, every bit of property in that name reverts back to you. And if you understand that you're doing this for the glory of God in the storehouse, then you immediately, the Treasury gets everything.
That's why
The law
I
of
made a contract that they had to give me 100-fold if they used my name to put me into that jurisdiction.
Okay.
They do, probably into the trust, not to you.
The 100-fold contract.
But your name is only known by God. Your name is not on the birth certificate. The birth certificate is a fiction of law that's created for a certain beneficial purpose that we're out here trying to fucking destroy. All right? You cannot destroy what the fiction of law was done for. The fiction of law was to transfer your usufruct to the Treasury so the nation is funded. The trust called United States is funded. Right now, the bankers are the ones funding it. Why do you think their rights are protected? They're the only ones funding it. We're not. We're over here arguing over what we're owed, what we're trying to get back. Fuck that. Just say, okay, I was owed this. Oh, Treasury can have it. Now, law of inheritance is what? If I get the inheritance and immediately give it over to someone, I'm absolved of any duty to the inheritance. So I take the inheritance and I give it right back to the storehouse. Because all you're doing is in this system, in this dead world system, what is your inheritance?
Yeah.
Empty way of life. It's the empty way of life you're inheriting if we don't do this. You're inheriting it from your ancestors, so it's being passed down from generation to generation. The debt goes from generation to generation. It's just debt. You're inheriting debt. So give it back to the Treasury, and that becomes the asset now they can use to get rid of the debt.
So I guess the question I have is, do you do that IRS Form 56 that a lot of people recommend?
I don't think you need that.
Convert everything over to...
I mean, I see people do it, and I'm like, okay, I don't really believe in that. I believe you just a simple appointment,
Well,
under power of appointment.
well, could you then take a 56 trust and everybody that's acting with authority, give them a specific duty for your estate?
I guess you can.
And if you do that, they have a fiduciary duty. If not, they then have a mandatory 5-year prison term.
I guess so. If you
That
really
way-
wanted to go down in every little thing you wanted to control,
But
you
not
can
to say
control
like
every
this-
little thing.
this judge-
Here's what I did.
This judge,
Okay,
cost
go
me
ahead.
$100 million. then all of a sudden I should basically make him the fiduciary. If not,
How did he
then-
cost you $100 million?
They basically stole Wells Fargo. I was doing a deal that was named the greatest restructuring of debt in third world history, and they cost me the entire deal. They cost me my business. They cost me everything.
Okay.
So,
I bet you if you go back and look at that court case, you'll find a CUSIP number, which serves as the financial asset underwriting it.
Okay.
Now you take that CUSIP number and your birth certificate, and you go back to the Treasury and you give it back to them, and you nominate the judge a trustee over it.
A trustee or a fiduciary?
Trustee. Trustee is a fiduciary. It's all the
Okay.
same. Everybody's getting so caught up in all these terms. It's like you don't understand that a trustee is a fiduciary. A fiduciary is also it's just obligated. It's just someone who's obligated to
So
perform.
then they would be violating martial law if they don't do what they're supposed to be doing.
Correct.
Okay, well then that's why they're stopping me, because I told somebody I was going to make them all.
You make them trustees, but you first have to establish that you're the one underwriting the matter. That's where your birth certificate comes in, and that's what we do with the CUSIP. Shows that the CUSIP number in the birth certificate is the security that's issued by the Usufruct. All right, the CUSIP number is the security. The birth certificate is the inventory of the things subject to the Usufruct, which is your interest. Not you, your interest. Okay? So now they have to take care of it. They have to pay all taxes, everything else. Your debt restructuring plan may actually interfere with their right to engage in commerce, because now you're doing what? What are you doing with the restructuring plan? You're trying to free other people, free their slaves?
No, actually, here's the interesting part of it. If you go look at the UCC, all contracts that they make with you have to be done in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see fraud being done in your contracts, then they're acting out of good faith, and so that's.
How do you
part of
prove
it.
fraud?
What's that?
How do you prove fraud?
Difficult.
That's not
The only way I know how to prove fraud is if they deprive the intangible right to receive honest services.
Well, that's what they did with me with, let's say, the house. They deliberately had somebody cook the numbers, and then when I went back to put it in court, they deliberately obstructed my ability to put that in court. So that's an intent to defraud.
Now the house thing.
I have an intent to defraud in every single situation.
Okay, the house you're getting, the house everybody keeps talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Once they take the house, they owe you the securities that were underwriting. I don't care what numbers they throw in there. That's irrelevant. That's all red herrings to get you to argue.
Mm-hmm.
Once you argue, you become the war rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're belligerent under the 14th Amendment. They're going to take everything. But if you go in there as the appropriate person, that's an actual term in the UCC, the appropriate person.
Okay, the appropriate person?
Appropriate person.
Show them the birth certificate.
Show them the birth
I have an
certificate.
interest.
I have a beneficial interest in the property you're foreclosing on. I also am the entitlement holder of all the securities. And I'm going to release my interest in the securities to you for exchange for the house. The securities are just worthless, funny money. Who really gives a shit about it?
Right.
So all you want is the property. So either they give you the property or they give you back the securities, or the judge needs to define what thing is being demanded in tender of payment. Because the promissory note you give to the mortgage company, to the bank or whatever, is done as tender in payment. And that's an actual term. It's the UCC 3-306. Tender of payment, tender in payment. You give it in tender of payment because there is no gold and silver, and they're going to give you a certificate of title because there ain't no title. So you give them certificate of payment, they give you certificate of title. That's what your promissory note is. It's basically a certificate of payment. Say, sure, I'd be happy to do this if there were actually gold and silver. You'd be happy to give me title if there were actually title. So we're going to exchange these illusionary things together, and now both of us are happy. I don't get into this whole we're owed and we're owed this and we're owed that and everything else. I don't get into the whole money aspect because that's a trap. That's part of the trap of Nimrod. That's part of the trap of Babel.
Okay.
Can't argue.
Don't argue with them over money. You will always lose.
Okay.
Because money is the Usufruct. You're going to lose if you're going to argue and take their Usufruct away from them. They're going to come in and say, whoa, you want the Usufruct? We have naked ownership. Now we get everything. Because now they have disposal rights over everything. Once you want the money, they have disposal rights over all the property the money is derived from. That's the trap. That's what it's all about. So if you're going to demand the money, then fine. Then they're going to dispose of the property. And you're not going to get anything because all you're getting is a Usufruct.
So he's saying either way, let them have what they want, but if they get the house, then you get the securities
and all the profits,
from it.
and then you
If
return the
they want
securities.
all the securities, you
Right.
get the house.
And then you return all that back, and you return the securities back to the Treasury because that's where they emitted
So
from.
if I was asking for the value of all of that was used and taken in gold and silver, then I'm not asking for their money.
Yeah, you are.
I was?
You're asking for gold and silver. That's against public policy. They're never going to give you in gold and silver.
Okay.
What you do, the value you want is book entry credit.
Okay.
Because that's value in their world, is book entry credit. The value, say like they took $100 trillion away from you in gold and silver. You ain't ever getting the gold and silver back, give it up. It's gone. They've already hidden and spread that around to everybody else. They ain't ever going to return that.
Okay.
But what you can get is the value that they took because that's what they purchased.
So I would get
Because
credit.
gold and silver is just elements out of the earth. Man is the one who gives it value. All right?
Okay.
Man is what gives anything
Faith.
value that they say.
It's his faith in it that give it value. And if you're going to put faith in gold and silver, you sure as shit ain't putting faith in God.
Right.
You're taking it away. And this is the trap. Everybody's want gold and silver. I want this, I want that, because this is what's going to save me. All this stuff. Wrong answer, because in one sweep of the hand, God can get rid of that stuff. Thieves, whatever else, will come and take it. That's what they're doing. These thieves and everything, we put all our faith in everything that rusts here on earth, and the thieves and everybody else are coming to take it.
Hey, a bad headlight and the thieves took my car.
Exactly. They found a reason. They found a reason to do it. You know, they're going to find a reason to do everything. They rationalize everything. It's that subjective morality or whatever they call it. That morality that changes day to day, in and out. That's mutable. It's just like the ocean, like the sands on a beach. You can't build on the sand of a beach because it always erodes and comes back. You know, go to northern Denmark on the tip of Denmark on the North Sea. It's 50 feet every day. Every tide the tide comes out, the whole top of Denmark changes 50 feet either way. And you can't build on that. That's why a foolish man builds his house upon the sand. It sinks, and it shifts with the sands. You got one rock here. That's all I said. I picked one rock. I don't care if it's a pebble. It's still a rock. And as from what I understand, many a pebble has taken down many a man. Just ask David. Yeah. Ask any military guy who's marched with a pebble in his shoe for 20 miles. You know, how does he think that little rock? I mean, he's maybe the biggest man on earth. That little rock put him on his ass because now he can't walk no more. I mean, it's the power of one small stone. A kidney stone is one small thing, but ask any guy who's tried to pass it how much it hurts.
You put a little pebble underneath a 2-ton rock, you can actually
twist it
easily.
Yeah. So you build your house upon one rock. And that's why I picked you. This one rock I have is this Usufruct. And as soon as and what people don't get is that the word Usufruct brought about all this other information. I didn't know all this before we discovered that word and what it meant. That's when all this other stuff started coming out.
On this rock that my church is built?
Excuse me?
On this rock my church is built?
On this rock my church is built. And what's your church? If you're a follower of Christ?
2 people or more.
The Church of Philadelphia.
It's the.
That's the church.
It's the. It's his.
Which
teachings.
Philadelphia?
Huh?
Which Philadelphia?
It's the way. The church is the way.
The church of Philadelphia. That was the one.
Oh,
What was that? In the Old Testament, there was a church of Philadelphia, and that's the one that kept the teachings. So if it's a church of Philadelphia, is not a physical church. It's the spiritual church within each one of us. Because you keep to the teachings of Christ, you're a minister for His church. His church is the Church of Philadelphia. That's the one that kept to His teachings, and it exists anywhere you are while you're teaching it. Like right now, you all are in the Church of Philadelphia.
Phileo is the root,
Yeah.
focused on love.
Brotherly love.
Yeah.
But
you go to Philadelphia, it's anything but brotherly love.
Isn't the United States now in Laodicea?
What's that?
Brotherly love.
Isn't the United States
On
in
a real good day,
Laodicea?
no other day.
A what?
Isn't the United States in Laodicea now?
What's Laodicea?
That's the seventh church.
I don't know what the seventh church is.
It's basically you have eyes but you cannot see. You have
That's
you have
right.
ears but you cannot hear.
And we're all coming out of it, and once people start seeing it, and that's when the church manifests, His church.
That's the period we've been in for a while now.
Yep.
Laodicea.
Yeah, and now we're coming out of it. And Christ is always the foundation of everything. So everything you do is built on Him. Built on
Yeah, but like you said, galactically, we're coming into the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Right.
You know,
And the age of Aquarius.
Right, the resonance and the frequency.
And the age of Aquarius is when the water bearers, the ones who hold the truth, go out to those seeds that have been planted, and they bring the truth to them so they may grow.
Well, the last time Boris was here was 3,600 years ago, and if you go to Earth stopped, and the time before that was the War of the Gods, which is misquoted as there was right in the beginning the world was chaos, but it wasn't. It was after the destruction.
Okay.
And so the world's been around for a heck of a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's been around for a while. The asteroid belt's a remnant of one planet that was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe it stripped Mars' atmosphere and all this stuff on Mars and shot it down here on Earth, which is why you find woolly mammoths and herds that are frozen solid.
Yeah, Boris is a light planet. You can't see it with a telescope.
Okay.
But because it's the fifth dimension, so the angels and Christ came from that cartoon. That's in some of the, which is the fifth dimension, which is a light dimension, which we can't see.
Right. And right now you're ascending to that. And here's how I look at it. The first dimension is thought. Mm-hmm. That's when the idea comes in. Second dimension is blueprint. Third dimension is result. Fourth dimension are variables. So all the variables are being put in place, and that's what you see out here at the Earth is the result of all the variables being put in place. So once all the variables are put in place by each one of us do their variables, whatever we're trying to find, you're reaching into darkness, going, what does this do? Like that. And once each one of you get to the point where your heart starts projecting, that's when that fifth dimension opens up. Because that's wholeness. That's completion. That's truth.
The transition out in the general public who can't see are saying we want spiritual rather than religious, but they don't understand what it means.
Well, yeah, they don't understand spiritual. As soon as you bring in the Bible and Christ and all that other stuff, they instantly shut down and go, well, I don't want that. The Catholic Church, well, that's the Catholics. The Catholics did all that shit to make Christianity so hated. They're the ones who did it. They're the ones who killed the Indians. They're the ones who went down to Peru and did whatever they did. They're the ones who buried all those children up in Canada that they're now starting to uncover. They're the ones who went into Africa and did all that. They're the ones who did it all. The Christians didn't do it. The Catholics did it.
Some Catholics, not all Catholics.
No, not all, but they've all been led astray by their own church.
I believe the Portuguese actually went and did relationships.
Well, okay, but that may be. But what I'm getting at is the Catholic Church itself, through the Vatican, has corrupted what is supposed to be taught to people.
Right.
You might have those who did good here and there, but the Catholics themselves, the Roman Catholic Church, as the supposedly spiritual center of the earth, is the one who did it all, the one who made this such a complex.
Good and evil. You can either be good or you can be evil. So you can either be
Either way, you pay them for repentance.
Right. You're either Roman or you're the way.
Yeah.
The way is Christ.
Right.
By your salvation.
But I'm saying that the Catholic Church, as it stands right now, is the one it created all that crap that we're facing.
Yes.
When it comes down to dealing people, when you bring up Christ in the Bible, they immediately go, well, didn't all these people die in the name of religion? Yes, in the name of that religion right there. Christianity ain't a religion, it's a spiritual function.
But it's the Babylonian
If you read the Jesuit oath, it tells you plainly.
Yes. I mean, they created the nation here to monetize sin. They're already telling you, the saints don't need saints don't need government, guys. If you're living a saintly life, you don't need government. You already govern yourself. The nation was built to govern sinners.
That was the whole issue with Samuel when the nation wanted a king.
Yeah, if you want a king, we're going to give you a king, and he'll make confectionaries out of your women and soldiers out of your men, and everybody will work, and they'll get the king they want, and they'll clamor for it.
And then the curse put on them was they would never be without one.
That's right. So when you understand that your usufruct now is in trust, and you're holding the beneficial interest, when you release it, consolidation takes place. Consolidation takes place in two ways. First, by the usufruct surrendering his right to the proprietor, which is they're never going to surrender the usufruct to you because that means they have to get rid of their profits, or by release of the proprietor of his rights to the usufructory. So you release your rights to the usufructuary, which is the state, and now it consolidates the debt, which creates extinguishment. And by the law of nations, property may be acquired by occupation, accession, commixation, or the use or the permanency of the usufruct. How do you know they used the usufruct? What's the evidence?
They manage it all.
Huh?
They manage it all.
The Federal Reserve note is the evidence they've used the usufruct of the people. Because that's the only way they get money is by loans, and they pledge the credit of the people to pay back those loans. That's the evidence that they've used the usufruct. Which is why whenever you're using it, all you are is a usufructuary. Because money itself is a quasi-usufruct and must be consumed in order to have value. So therefore, when you're using it, you're saying, I am the usufruct, I pay. Usufruct means I pay. That's not what we are. We're kings, we dispose. I dispose or I pay. Which one do you want? And if you're going to do a UCC filing, who would be the debtor in the spiritual world? Who would be the debtor?
You.
Christ. He pays. He's the usufruct of your sins. He needs your sins to have something to do. Otherwise, what the hell do you need Christ for? If you don't live in sin, what do you need Christ for? If you're a saint, what do you need Christ? You don't need it. So therefore, that name acts as Christ. It's your debtor, and that you remit your sins to Him. He takes them to the Father, and the Father goes, okay, we're going to absolve it. Boom, done.
Being a king is admission of being a sinner, the maximum sinner.
The thing with the Federal Reserve notes, he's 100% right, because first of all, there's the commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or a Federal Reserve note. I tell clerks and stores this all the time, and a promissory note has to have a promise to pay. So commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. And a promissory note has to have a promise to pay, but there's no promise to pay on Federal Reserve notes.
No, it's actually the Federal Reserve note is more like a trust certificate.
Exactly.
It's a trust certificate of a share of a usufructuary interest that they acquired through the permanency of the usufruct when they did the birth certificate registration.
It creates
They
a
took
trust.
They took it, and when you go into the UCC,
One of the questions, or one of the things I've talked about as far as the national debt, I'm under the opinion that it's not an actual national debt per se. It's the money supply. Yeah. It's what's required.
It's what the people are owed. So here we go. This is purchase.
The bankers are creating the debt.
All right.
By basically, you know.
This is what purchase means. Purchase means taking by sale, lease, discount, negotiation, mortgage, pledge, lien, security interest, issue or reissue, gift, or any other voluntary transaction creating an interest in property. When you tender the promissory note, they purchased it. When you tender the mortgage, they purchased it. Now they owe you reciprocal duty.
When you pay the taxes, they purchased it.
Yeah. Well, you purchased it. Because you took the taxes. You took the taxes by negotiation of the instrument.
Okay.
You took it. You purchased it.
What you said earlier about the money, you have to use it, and you have to have, if it's not in movement, it loses.
Correct. Put a gold coin down on the table. What value does it have?
Well, not just that, but the Federal Reserve notes. Mm-hmm. If you were in money 30 years ago and you saved it underneath your mattress, it's worth what, 1/30 now? If you store it in a house, like you buy a house, that will maintain some of the value. You won't lose as much.
All right, here's who's going to be really, really, really pissed off when Trump does the thing with the Treasury. All those drug dealers down in South America who have their money hidden in the mattresses. That's why he wants to build the wall, so people don't come over here with wheelbarrows full of cash trying to redeem it. Right. If it ain't in a bank, it's not going to be redeemed. That's all there is to it. It's not going to be taken. So they're going to have some sort of accountability. So all these people hiding all this money, all these child traffickers, all these human traffickers, all these slave runners, all these drug dealers, all these people who are hiding money in their mattresses and everything else, or in these offshore accounts where they can't be traced, they're screwed.
And they mainly hide larger bills.
Right.
And I've been saving $1 bills for a long time. I
Well,
think the
here's-
$1 bill will be the only one that will be redeemed.
Here's the
because
thing.
they haven't changed it.
Well, here's the thing about $1. That's the only one authorized by law to be printed.
Right. And it's
Everything
the only
else,
one that hasn't
every
been
other
done.
denomination is a fraction of the dollar. 1/5 is 1/5 of a dollar. One $5 bill is 1/5 of a dollar. $20 bill is 1/20th of a dollar. $100 bill is a 1/100th of a dollar. Dollar is done on the census. It's issued for every man, woman, and child in this nation. So by law, right now, it's up to 300 and some odd million. So they're allowed to issue 300 and some odd million $1 bills, and that's what they are. So those are the ones that actually hold the value of the nation because it's $1.
And the other thing that I've learned is that in circulation, there's only about 1 trillion physical dollar bills and coins. And
It's actually It's actually 7 million notes. Is what the purchase.
About 1 trillion. So most of the value is either stored
electronically,
in physical
digitally,
things or credits.
Yeah. So what you have is all these. That's what fractional is. They take $1 and they fractionalize it. They just make one, 0.01, 0.02, 0.03, and all that stuff on between it. And what they're really doing is they're fractionalizing it out, and they're flipping it over, saying this is wealth. And it's like, no, it's not. If you have $2 billion in your bank account, you don't have $2 billion. You have 2 billionth of a dollar, because it's all a result of the fractional. And that's how they're doing all that wealth, that so-called wealth. But without them doing that, you don't have the current buildup of the economies and everything else. You don't have all this stuff, because the reason they went to Federal Reserve and this fiat currency is because there's not enough gold and silver to do any real commerce. They can do up to a certain point, but at some point, someone's going to own it all. It's like Monopoly, man. You all ever play Monopoly? Eventually, someone owns that board. If you played Monopoly with the rules of Usufruct, you would start out with $5,000. You would end up with $5,000. You would have acquired all the property on behalf of the bank, and you'd be going around the board building properties. You'd be building the hotels, and you'd go out around to visit them. Everybody else would have to pay their way. Bank would own all the property. The bank's just Treasury. Right now, what they did in 33 is they privatized the Treasury. They put a private money system on it. They said, well, we can't handle it ourselves, so let's go outsource it. Outsourcing the currency has got to be one of the dumbest things the government's ever done. And they should have handled it in the Constitution when they were doing it, when they were discussing it. They let it go, and this is the result. Yeah. But I believe they had to let it go to its natural